Hey everyone, thanks for joining us again for another episode of DirectConnect. Today, hopefully, we can keep our thoughts clean and pure. And today's what is it? Special day, isn't it? May the 4th be with you. We there? Feels like a Disney day to me. Isn't that strange though to call it a Disney day?
Do you have any days that aren't Disney days?
Well, yeah. Star Wars and Disney still.
It's like Brian not having a donut day.
Yeah, it's like not having a donut day. That's right.
But me not having a dumpster fire day.
Or a dumpster fire day.
There's a common denominator in those dumpster fires, Nick. I just can't figure it out.
They come out of nowhere.
Yeah, May the 4th.
It's like Pigpen for
May the 4th.
And I don't know why we don't have Leonard on here, because Leonard's,
Well, I do.
I know why we would arguing about canon.
We would do nothing but talk about Star Wars. It would be the end of the show.
He could change 12 costumes, all throughout the show. So
yeah, that's crazy.
See if I can sum it up. Phantom Menace is the best episode.
oh man,
that didn't work either.
We can always evoke Brant by doing a whole session on Ewoks.
Oh, I got so much time for that.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of Hollywood and things going on and the rich and the famous, we got Elon buying Twitter, which is blowing up everybody's world supposedly, and who would have thought the guy that is closest to the energy sector with these electric cars, the EV man, would actually own a social media platform someday. Strange world. It reminded me of back in the day when electric utilities were also going to be our internet provider.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to use transmission lines. What do they call that?
I don't know.
They had a name for it.
Yeah.
So many projects that went out there.
Yeah. That was
giving me PTSD from when we were doing wholesale fiber when I was at Grant. All the board meetings, I was expected, like, when we're talking about rec sites for the hydros or budget, people get up in arms about that. Nope. Fiber and Bitcoin. Those were the hot topics
out there. Yeah.
Talks about, to me, it comes back to, trying to stay in your same lane. You get outside of that lane sometimes, you start bleeding into things that don't make you look so favorable. I think that comes to any case with technology too. When you're trying to do your core business and you go, wow, we could even make more money if we did this. Mm-hmm. Let's spend a bunch of money and build something that we're not really familiar with, and that can get you in some hot water.
Or buy something we're not familiar with, right?
Yeah. It's well, anyway. I thought it was interesting that an electric vehicle creator out there, playing in the social media space. What could possibly go wrong? No idea.
Indeed,
it's going to be a fun adventure.
I might have to rejoin Twitter just to see it all go down.
Well, in the pandemic, I quit Twitter because I just couldn't take it any longer. I gave up. I think I had over 10,000 followers, which isn't huge, but it took several years to get there, and you just give it up, and it's gone. But it's a lot more fun to watch Twitter now, where I'm not thinking about every word I'm doing, whether I'm going to get banned for I don't know, for liking the Doe Show.
That's right.
How dare you like the Doe Show?
You get in trouble for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a very controversial topic.
Well, change is inevitable. There's always going to be something going on, and change happens in our world from a security perspective almost daily. We don't know who's going to come after us, or those threat actors out there are going to be unique and new, and we're never going to be able to outrun them. And as a group of people that are tasked with protecting some of the most critical infrastructure in the world, or the most critical infrastructure. It's a battle, and you got to find that happy place and finding where you can do your best. And a lot of that is that we've talked about this many times, is just be prepared, but it's also thinking outside the box and going through the motions of what a real security team does is think of all the possibilities that could happen and find where you can address and mitigate and remediate potential risks. I think that's important, but also on the compliance side, we got regulations that are always changing. We got the new TSA standards or to be standards, directives right now, and then we have Project 2016-02 from NERC. It could change the entire vernacular of our NERC SIP world. Phrases that we got so used to using may not mean the same anymore, or may just be gone, deprecated from the world, or new ones. I don't know what you guys are seeing. I see that we live in an everlasting change in security and compliance. You just got to kind of get used to it.
One of the things I'm seeing, and it's really hard in the compliance space, is just a hesitance to adopt resilience as a strategy. I think through what things that I learned literally on the battlefield when I was early 20s in Iraq. When I left for Iraq, the M1 Abrams was essentially impenetrable to a ground attack. Unless you had a Javelin, now an NLAW, or a helicopter, it was a pretty safe place to be. But then we found EFPs were created, and we didn't have a response to that. We had best defense in the world. We didn't have a good countermeasure for that for a couple years. Same thing I look at with cyber attacks, physical attacks, whether it's through SIP 14 or just the day-to-day. I can build all the defenses in the world, but somebody's going to come along and find a pinhole to get through. I got to know how to identify that, assess, and my team's got to know how to respond. More importantly, they got to know how to respond if I'm not there. And it's really hard to write a standard for that that makes sense. And I think that's one of the things I appreciate the drafting teams starting to take on that weighty task. I don't envy them at all. And I remember sitting in the SIP 14 drafting team with the regulatory folks that were there looking at that going, we don't know how we're going to audit this at all. Short of running exercises and grading the exercise.
Auditing those standards that are so wide open that can have a variety of answers to them makes it difficult from an auditor, and it really makes it difficult for the utility that's trying to do the right thing. I don't envy either the drafting team writing these or those that have to comply with the SIP 13, the SIP 14, the style by which those are, SIP 8.
Curious for you guys, could you ever, just that got me thinking of one of the things that happens in the military as you go through various training exercises. For the Army, we had Fort Irwin, California, that National Training Center, where they graded your performance. Didn't matter how well you prepared, it was all going to come out in the wash. They put you through that crucible. Any thought of maybe something like that coming down? We're gonna come grade your exercise.
That would be amazing.
Yeah,
I think that would be very, very helpful for utilities. There were times when NERC would put together groups that would go out and evaluate certain sections of the standard. I don't know if they've done that type of assessment. I mean, they put on, a great show. The whole GridX environment is a wonderful start.
Yeah.
But where do you go from there? Utilities are out there trying to fit into the GridX program. But if they had somebody come to evaluate their performance on being ready and such, it would be so much more helpful than trying to find out whether they have a document that has the right title on it.
Well, having also the well-designed exercises, right? I mean, we're all pretty familiar with the SIP 8 type exercises with, cybersecurity incident response, those types of things. But I don't think people have really considered, a lot of exercises outside of those that are absolutely required by the standard. But, give some pause to think, like, how could you develop an exercise program, so to speak, and not talking fitness, but, a compliance program of sorts where you're conducting regular exercise, train like you fight, right? I mean, what would that look like? I wonder. I
Well,
haven't put much thought into it, but I like the topic because it'd be kind of fun.
we don't all prescribe to the doing exercises as a regular way of being healthy, but it is definitely the way to get healthy, right? We all know it from a physical perspective, individual perspective. We know
Sure.
you have to exercise and you have to eat right in order to have a healthy body overall. We know it. We don't all do it,
Yeah.
but we know it. So that goes right straight to security, into compliance. Test, evaluate, correct, get better. That's the only way you can do this. And I think it's the best standard that we have are those that have those elements embedded in them. We got it in SIP 14. We've got SIP 8 as standalone, though. Sure would be nice if SIP 8 was an umbrella of some sort to a number of different requirements.
Well,
I don't even know if that's possible.
go ahead.
Is that where they were trying to go with the old identify, assess, correct? They just didn't think it all the way through.
Maybe that's where it was.
But I think that was an element of it. I remember I was there during a lot of those V5 drafting team, and the concept when that came out was, in my opinion, was pretty sound. But then it kind of took on a life of its own, and like a lot of things, turned out to be not as great as intended. But really taking that perspective of instead of a zero defect requirement, it's okay. How do we do on our last exercise? How do we do on this exercise? How much did we improve? Where did we improve? So you're only comparing yourself to how good or bad you were the previous time, and just building on that continuously, like that. That's something that could yield some pretty significant benefits. But I don't think the industry or obviously the standards aren't set up for it. But
Yeah. It just seems to me that we're about there. Maybe we were there 4 or 5 years ago where we needed to move away from that zero defect, that performance problem on each individual nit of the requirements. We're at a point where we need to see people grow and mature.
Yeah.
And we talk about maturity in cybersecurity. We talk about maturity relevant to a number of different programs that the Department of Energy has put out there. We've put a lot of emphasis on what NIST says to do. However, we don't regulate to those. We don't audit to those. We audit to the strict language of this standard. And that vernacular of the strict language of the requirement, to me, is outdated. Its time is gone. We need to come up with a way to be able to audit people for what they do that is good, and help them mature what isn't there yet, which is still a child that needs to be brought up and be able to feed itself, for example.
Yeah, I think like any good exercise, you don't jump right in with the full scale exercise, or even drop into a range or any of those sort of things. You start with a tabletop and say, okay, how are we doing on this? What are our big areas? You're also looking at your individual training. What are your smaller groups doing, particularly for some of the bigger utilities where you may have 3, 4, 5 different groups that are playing in the pond? How are they doing as a team? And then you bring them all together on that tabletop. But then you evolve it. Stacy, to your point, that allows you that growth. One of the things I think it would really help with is the turnover in it, and whether it's through retirements, which, remember, that was the big thing when I was coming up, is that we were facing a wave of retirements. Well, that was about 25 years ago, so by my math, we're about ready for the next one of those.
Yeah, that was the brownout, right?
Yeah.
They called it.
Every time I go out to a utility, there's somebody who's got a countdown. Today, I talked to a gentleman who had 140 days.
Fantastic.
He didn't have hours yet, but he said that's probably around day 100 he'll put hours on it. So there's always somebody.
Well, it's definitely an unforgiving role, right? Anyone that's working in security is already in a compliance role to start with, and then you take a regulated governance approach to those processes that are associated with doing security, and it even makes it more onerous and more stressful for those that have to play in that world. And maybe a lot of the retirements that I've heard recently have to do with, I'm just done with this. I'm done with being in the compliance game. I'm tired of being the bad guy. I don't want to be bad cop anymore. I want to do something that's a little fun. Not saying that security can have a lot of fun with it. Maybe there is. I've never seen super fun. There's a passion that goes with it, but maybe not. Wow, this is amazing. Let me do this all day long. Yeah, I think there's got to be some kind of change in the approach that we're doing for the electric sector, and maybe, well, wouldn't it be nice if TSA went from these strict directives, and I guess they're kind of vague. Some of us can't even see them; they're so important. If that led to a set of standards that did do something like that was more assessment based, that would be a great show and tell to the electric sector to say, hey, you guys can do better, come on along with us. And I don't know, I think a lot about NERC. That's all I do often, and I wonder if I were king for the day, what could I do to help and make things better. And I might have to redo the entire standard development team process. Nothing against those that are involved in doing that. They're doing fantastic work. But do we really want it like that? Do we want a group of people that spend 5 years to 6 years developing a standard because it's so important to get each and every word correct, or you can't even get it passed? You can't get it past, your balloting system. That's a struggle.
Part of that is the standards being so focused on defense or preventive controls. That's all they are. There's very little outside of, SIP 8, I'd say maybe 9, 14, maybe a little bit if you write it the right way. But everything else is, thou shalt do this to keep this from happening. With no thought to what happens when that doesn't work, which I think we can all point to. We could probably spend hours going through examples of compliant but not secure.
You've seen small attempts in that realm, though. Like in SIP 13, they want you to do a risk assessment based on evaluating a vendor. Standards weren't really written strict enough, though, or clear enough to really define what that looks like. And so utilities are left with this write your own adventure program and really are missing the point sometimes. It's that balance part of it, right? Where do you find the right words in order? And sometimes it's not the requirement. Sometimes it's the program around the auditing of that set of requirements.
One of the other things I've seen with the choose your own adventures is what behaviors are incentivized. If you write an adventure that says, "Oh, I'm going to walk over to the door and come back," you're compliant, so you get left alone. You actually write something that's legitimate, you get put through the ringer occasionally because you may have missed a step somewhere along the way. But in the grand scheme of security, which is better? You're doing the right thing because it's the intent and it's the right thing to do. Now all of a sudden you're held accountable to it, where somebody else doesn't even try, and they're not. That's one of the things that, talk about what grinds my gears. They're ground. They're circles.
Yep.
Well, there's certainly no easy answer on any of this, but it's. I think I kind of have a feeling that change is coming. There is some level of change. I think the whole pandemic that left us all remote made us think a little differently already. Made the regulators think differently, and maybe those are lessons that are being thought about right now that we don't know of. We're obviously not plugged into everything. Wish we were. It's history is going to either be repeated or it's going to have lessons that change the course of the way we go. And I'm excited about coming out of this pandemic. I'm excited about some of the new things that we're seeing in other regulations in water. We got security regulations coming. What is that going to do? Is that going to help us all? Or is it going to bring us back down to even more crushing type of compliance? And I hope it's the better, right, of the two. And if you're listening to this at all, you got this far along in this conversation, we encourage you to, to think outside the box and push your regulators to think outside the boxes too. If you're NERC listening to this, we're not mad. We want you to do better. But if you're a utility, think about ways you can work with your regulator to encourage them to do better too. Don't always just approve everything. Have a conversation, and use your bodies out there that are bigger than you. Like EEI and AGA and all those to help push the proper message, whatever that might be. But something has to change eventually, and maybe we can be better all together.
Yep, much agreed.
Enough catchphrases and all that.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
I think,
Trying
hold
to
on,
find
look at my checklist. I think you hit 8 out of 10.
You got a bingo?
Too bad hashtags are so
bingo.
1990. No, what are they?
Hashtags?
2000?
Yeah, those are so. 2000.
Does that?
Put a hash brown on it. Send it to the internet.
Well, guys, we're coming up on time. So, matter of fact, we went way over. Any parting words? Let's start with Brian. You got to have some parting words.
I've had very few words in this discussion, but no parting words. This has been a good discussion to get you thinking about how the standards could be, and what we should do. I think one of those main struggles is just change in general, like we talked about. It's difficult in the utility industry to make a lot of change quickly, and definitely not keeping up with technology or evolving threats. We recognize that, but trying to close the gap between those two, between current state and how fast things change. But that's keep a mind's eye to opportunities. I think, Stacy, your admonition to push the regulators and say, hey, how can we do this different? How can we do it better, so that we're more resilient? To take from Nick's comments about the resiliency side of it, but also just how can we do this better? Because there's some change needed, I think. But that's all I got.
Just be better. Just be better. How about you, Nick?
The
Parting words.
big thing is watch out for that failure of imagination. Those things that keep you up at night, turn them into an exercise. Ask your team, go find the new guy. What keeps you up at night? And then the next question, what if it actually happens? What do we do? No,
That's good.
There's a scenario.
Yep.
So.
Perfect. Well, everyone, thank you for listening to our blabbering, and we appreciate all of you listening in and paying attention. And we don't have all the answers, but we've been around the block a few times, so hopefully we were able to give you a little bit of thought. Some things to think about, take back to your teams, and if you need to talk to us, we're just a phone call or an email away, and we'd love to be able to chat with you anytime. So give us a call. With that, this is a wrap with today's May the Force Be With You, DirectConnect. Everyone have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay up to date on all the videos we release here at Archer by clicking on the subscribe button. Click on the bell to be notified right away when we release new videos. If you know of a topic or someone you think we should talk to on DirectConnect, please let us know in the comments below.